Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of the Nintendo Jump podcast. We're a weekly discussion podcast created for Nintendo gamers by Nintendo gamers. It's the week of July 16, 2018. This is Sergio, and today I am joined by Daryl
Hey, what's up, everyone?
and by Kevin.
What's good, everybody?
So, episode 4, how are you guys doing? Are you guys for or against this? What do you think, Kevin?
Oh my god.
Oh man, let me just start out by saying I'm for this Final Fantasy 4. One of the best Final Fantasies ever. Anyway, just I'm ready to go. 3 times the charm for something. We'll get something there. 444.
Right.
I mean,
Right,
once you
right.
hit 4, you're in the rhythm, right? And we're getting
Yeah.
we're finally actually getting some feedback from people, and really, really appreciate that. So,
Absolutely.
thanks to all of you, and we're gonna keep trying to make this a fun show and improve it as much as possible. So, really appreciate everyone listening and providing some feedback.
Feedback's always
Yeah.
good. It's the way to go, and we're always looking to improve because we're always looking to make that next jump.
Oh,
man.
Episode 4, all the puns.
That's how we roll here.
That's
So,
there
yeah.
we go.
This is episode 4. It's kind of a special one. It is our first episode after the release of the highly anticipated RPG that many of us, and definitely all 3 of us, have been looking forward to. None other than Octopath Traveler.
Dun,
It
dun,
is
dun.
out. Yes. So we figured we would discuss our overall progress in the game so far. We'll try to keep it spoiler free for the most part,
Mhm.
and we'll talk about what we have enjoyed in the full game as opposed to our experiences with the demos before. And then we will be discussing some of our favorite RPGs of all time. So awesome discussion coming up. So
Yeah.
Kevin, let me start by asking you, so how far are you into the full game, and what are some of the favorite things that have been in the full game that you maybe didn't experience in the demo?
Absolutely. So, where I am in Octopath Traveler, I have gotten 6 out of the 8 characters. The
wow.
2 characters that I haven't gotten yet are Primrose and Oberic.
Mhm.
Oberic. And so far, I've have my 2 favorite people. Tressa, the merchant. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. she's my primary go-getter. I started out with her initially, and then the thief, the master, the myth, the legend, Therion. Yeah. I really like the thief sort of the class because one of my favorite animes of all time is Lupin the Third, and he's like a world-class thief, and it's a really old anime. You guys should watch it, by the way, but related to Arsene Lupin and that the whole spiel. So I gotta have the thief in the party. One of the things that I really like about the game so far, and this might not be something that is totally major, but whenever you boost in the game, so boost is basically you can double or triple or quadruple your attack, what have
Mhm.
you in the battle. So every time, like, say Therion would boost, he'll be like kind of like Dragon Ball Z, like Super Saiyan. I don't know, that grunt just takes me back to those nostalgic days where I used to watch a lot of Dragon Ball Z, and when they're powering up for like 35 hours, just they're making that. But this one is really short and sweet, and just gets me going. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
trying to do a max attack, because for a max attack he'll do like 4 grunts. So I was like, whoa. That's. I mean, it's a minor thing, but it's a nice touch, and I really like it.
And they all kind of do that, and
Yeah,
my
they do.
favorite one of them is actually Ulbrich. When you charge
Yeah.
it up to his max level boost, he just yells, "My blade is unbending," and it's just it's the stupidest thing, but it cracks me up every time. So I have a hard time taking him out of my party, to be honest.
Nice.
It's so epic too. It just makes you feel very into the combat. And that's another thing, Sergio, that I really like about this game is the combat system. It's it's not too complicated. It's easy enough to get into, and later on, hopefully when I get all the characters, I'll be able to mix and match and figure out who wants to be my ideal party. But for me, gotta have Therion and Tressa, you know, I don't know about you guys, but I have this thing in RPGs where if there's a boss, I gotta steal from that boss. I gotta steal the item and the money, because I mean, who doesn't want
Right,
more
right.
items and more money? And if I don't get what I want and I beat the boss, I'm gonna start over. I mean, it's I don't know if it's like a habit. Have you
Oh
guys do you guys have
wow.
that habit? Yeah, like it doesn't matter if I beat the boss. Like I need to get those items because you never know. It could be a rare item. It could be a bunch of
Yeah,
gold. And
yeah.
for Tressa, you need. She relies on gold for one of her attacks. I won't say which attack because it's gonna be a spoiler. So yeah, and
Yeah.
it's
Some older games kind of did that. They encourage you to try to steal items or money because, yeah, like you said, sometimes you might get something that you weren't expecting or you get like a big reward. So, yeah, it goes back to how this game feels really classic from the get-go.
it does. And I mean, it could be just my OCD kicking in because like I just it has to be done that way because I really I want to try to get all the rarest items, and then some of those rare items from different RPGs there are from boss battles. And I mean, if I take an hour to be a boss but I don't get the rarest item, I mean, gotta start over. It's not the most ideal, but it's just a habit of mine. I'm sure other people would have the same sort of habit. Hopefully, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
And if I am, then boohoo.
Yeah, I haven't. So with Therion, I haven't gotten any like really rare items from enemies yet. I'm assuming that is a thing. Like I'm assuming some enemies have some really cool stuff, but generally they give you something useful, like
Exactly. Yeah.
an elemental stone that you can use a full attack against all of the enemies of like lightning or whatever. But one thing I want to say regarding Therion actually is outside of the battle, you can just steal from pretty much anybody you can talk to in the game, right?
Right.
And a lot of the people have really, really powerful weapons and armor and such. And it's just like, it's this random old guy in a town, and he'll be carrying one of the most powerful weapons in the early game. So
I know which one. I know which one you're talking about.
Oh
I,
yeah,
I,
the
yeah, I
the
know
one
which
example everybody talks about is the golden axe, which is
Yes.
actually this random old guy in Alphenstown, and he's carrying a golden axe. And if you try to steal hit from him with Therion, you get a 3% chance.
Oh my goodness.
Um,
So low.
and the way it works is if it fails 5 times, then you have to go pay the bartender a fee to restore your reputation. Otherwise, you can't do anything with these people. Like you can't go up to them and try to purchase anything or anything really.
Right.
Now, obviously, you can also just save your game and then keep reloading, but I don't really like that. But I got super lucky in that I tried stealing this golden axe because it looked super powerful, and I got it on my second try.
Wow. Dude, that's
And
really good.
all of a
Oh,
sudden, this
shoot.
axe has like 200 attack power more than any other weapon I had at the time, and I'm just like, okay, we can
There we
work
go.
with this.
There we go.
Nice, nice. So, Daryl, what's your progress? What's your favorite parts of the game so far?
So I've been playing the game like crazy, and like I kind of expected, I did not load my save from the demo. You actually were able to do that, but I played the demo a few weeks ago, and I just wanted to start this game, play through the whole game, kind of in sequence, see how it felt through. So doing that and not skipping any cutscenes, story elements, anything that I played before, I literally just played it all, watched it all again.
Right.
I just completed chapter 2 of all 8
Nice.
characters. So
Whoa.
every character, the way it's kind of laid out is a little different than you might expect. Each character has their own story, kind of,
Yes.
and they have their own chapters. They need to go their own places and do things relating to whatever they wanted to do, whatever their goal is. In some cases, exploring the world, trying to sell stuff, or in some cases, epic revenge stories, or a bunch of different kind of tropes, but generally done in good ways.
Yeah.
So I know rumors of how many chapters there are. I'm not gonna spoil that, but the demo was chapter 1 for every character. I have now gone the second step for everyone.
Boom.
Nice, nice.
And I gotta say, the chapter 2 stuff has really it's exceeded on the chapter 1 stuff more than I expected it to, actually.
Mhm.
Like, for example, Tressa's chapter 1 is, it's very, very straightforward. And that's not a bad thing. I'm not really listing it as a negative, but it goes exactly where you expect it to go. She leaves town and goes to explore the world, and that's it. Her
Right.
chapter 2 gets a little crazy. She
Mm.
gets a little chippy at the boss who's doing some kind of evil stuff, and kind of stands her ground a little bit, and it's actually impressive. I was really digging her chapter 2 more than I expected to.
Hmm.
So the way the game does it, actually, like, on the world map, you actually see where you need to go for each character next, and beside that is a recommended level. And I've always
Yes,
kind of
that's right.
assumed that that's a party level instead of just a main character level, but I've been pretty much just following that. So whichever level is the next lowest one, that's the next story I'll do, and kind of go around like that.
Oh, cool.
Hmm. So, what would be your ideal party right now, just given that you've played Chapter 2 with all the characters? Like, what is your ideal party at the moment?
Well, there's really not one. Uh,
Mm,
technically, there's a few combinations that seem to make sense. One of the things I really like about what this game is doing is, one, all 8 characters are likable in their own ways. I actually find myself liking all
Yes.
of them, which I
Mm.
didn't really expect going in. I thought that, okay, I'd really like a few characters and then a couple, whatever.
Mm.
One of my whatever characters was actually Alphen, who's the apothecary, who has turned into one of my favorite characters in the game so far.
Hmm.
So it's all been a little surprising to me that I actually like them. But to get into the actual mechanics of the game, there's a bunch of different things you need to consider when you're actually putting your party together,
Mhm.
and it's kind of across the board. So you want to consider what is my party good at in battle. So because of the break system, every enemy is weak to a set number of weapons and magic types.
Right.
So if you're against an enemy that you do not have one of the weapons or magics available to you, it just takes a lot longer. It's a lot harder of a fight. So inherently, that makes you want to kind of spread out your weapons as much as possible.
Right.
So that, you have a dagger, a sword, a lance, a bow, just to try to cover as many options as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing to consider. Another thing to consider is the out of battle actions. So there's 4 basic types, one of which is acquiring items from the non-playable characters you can talk to, either by stealing them or purchasing them. That's either Therion or Tressa. One of them is to find out more information about that character and thus other things. So a lot of times when you inquire or look, scrutinize an NPC, it'll tell you a little backstory of them, which, by the way, is really well written. So some of the
Mm.
characters that you can scrutinize, their little backstory blurb there is
Hmm.
extremely well thought out. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's a little sad. Kind of depends on the character and situation, but it generally makes sense with where you find them and what they're kind of like. But what that does is it also gives you information that you can use to complete side quests. It'll literally give you information on X topic, and then after that you can go talk to another character and complete their quest, because then you give them that information you just found out. So that's an extremely useful tool. That's also how you get like discounts at the inns, and
Mhm.
it'll stock the stores a little bit more. It'll make your skills work better. It's very useful, actually. So that is Cyrus and Alphen have that skill. The other one is guidance or allure, which is Ophelia and Primrose. So basically, that is convincing one of the NPCs to follow you. So that gives itself a couple benefits, one of which you can summon them in battle and they'll actually show up and do a few attacks with
Right.
you, which is nice. And then the other one is there are some quests where you have to take people to certain places. Like one in particular, this grandfather is lost and you have to escort him to find his grandson. And it's actually a little ways you got to go. So it's that kind of thing. And then the last one is actually challenging the NPCs. So that's Ulbrich and Honnet, and they do it
Yep.
they do it different ways. But that's basically you go up to anyone and you can fight them, and I don't do that very often because it kind of feels wrong to just like run around smacking everybody. But in certain cases, you want to, like, so there's somebody strong guarding a door that may or may not have treasure behind it or something. You want to knock them down and get in there. Or sometimes people are causing problems, and you actually do that to progress the story or solve quests, whatever. So, in general, if you don't have those 4 types in your party, there's a chance that you're going to miss something. You'll be wandering past that grandpa that's lost, and you won't have either the characters that can guide them, and okay, you just don't get to do that, right? So it's generally a good idea to have one of each of them. And what's weird about that is that the characters that have similar skills do not have similar functions in battle. So, for example, Alphen and Cyrus have the same skills. Cyrus is essentially a black mage, so he's a powerful wizard type, does a lot of elemental damage. Alphen is a healer. So very, very different character types, very different roles in the party. So you've got to balance it around what weapons you're trying to use, what skills they have outside of battle, what roles they're going to fill inside of battle. It's surprisingly deep. Like it works really, really well.
Nice.
Yeah, and to your point, I mean, it's and just that versatility and variety of skills and what you need to do to mix and match against enemies in battle. I mean, that's the key to doing well in Octopath. Also, there's other considerations too, like who's going to be your healer when you're low on HP. Do you have a really strong physical type or magic type? Just things like that. So, and on Daryl, to your point with certain skills that characters have, there is one thing where there are purple chests all around, and there's only, as far as I know, there's only one person who can unlock those purple chests, and that's Therion. So another reason why you should have Therion in your party.
Right. No, I agree.
Yeah, the only reason I don't have him in my party a lot of the time is that he fills the same role as Tressa, which is a little unfortunate, but
yeah.
That it just is what it is there.
But you know what? You got your 3% golden axe. I mean, that's which
true.
You cannot buy. You cannot buy. Not for sale. Yeah.
And one thing I want to say is after you get past chapter 1, this is not really spoiler. It's on the back of the box, for goodness sake. You can actually get secondary jobs for characters. You just have to go walk around and find some shrines, and you'll unlock them. Once that happens, then it gets a lot more flexible what characters you can actually use in battle, because you're not really losing anything by putting the characters that you like in battle, as long as you're giving them jobs that support it. That said, the character, like, each character has a natural talent that the job does not fill. For example, all of Honnet's monster capture mechanics do not transfer with her job. So you do not use monsters if you put a hunter class. You just get her abilities and her weapons, but not the monsters. And you don't get the purple chest if you give somebody the thief skill, that kind of thing. So
Dang it.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
there's still a reason to use the specific characters for certain things, but it does feel like when you give somebody a secondary job, then all of a sudden you have access to the weapons that they can use, and they're called skills, the basically the special abilities of each character that you can get. You can also level up their skills and get their support skills, which are passive abilities like refilling your special points every turn, or a variety of other things. Like there's a lot of, you can really make some interesting builds here just by changing jobs around a little bit and supporting or equipping the correct support skills to go with it.
So what's an example of, say, like, because there's all these jobs, right? And what's an example of, maybe say Tressa, like what would you think would be a good secondary job for her? Just given the skills that she can learn. Because I mean, she could use a sword. Maybe she could use a sword. She could be a physical beast, or maybe as mage. Like, what do you think is ideal for someone like her?
So what I personally did, she naturally uses a bow and a lance, which are actually two very good weapons. They show up a lot in characters' weaknesses.
Yes.
What I ended up doing was giving her the scholar ability, which is the black mage wizard type. So she can cast magic, And as soon as I did that, and there was some rationale to go with it. One, it gives her the staff, so she can bonk people with the staff and get those weaknesses. That's kind of secondary. The other one is she naturally has abilities as a merchant to rest. When you rest, it takes a
Right.
turn and it refills your health a little bit and it refills your special points. She also has a support skill that halves the cost of all of the special skills that you do, like casting magic, for example. So she gets access to the really powerful spells for not that much. They call it SP, special points,
Mm-hmm.
and she has the ability to just refill her own. So
That's really efficient. Yeah.
yeah, with the right equipment on that build, then she becomes super powerful and she can hit pretty much any element. She has 3 separate weapons, so she can kind of be just fishing for weaknesses of the opponents, and it has turned out really well for me. I've been pretty impressed with her as a character.
Nice. So, question for you guys, and this is kind of gonna give away how little I have played of the game so far. How many characters can you have in your party?
4.
Yep.
4. Okay, I
4.
thought so. See, I went into this game as blindly as I could just to be surprised. So I figured it would be 8. I don't know if I'm sorry. I figured it would be 4, but I was wondering maybe it might have been all the way up to 8. Can you at least switch your party easily?
No, actually.
Yeah, so about that, you can. However, you cannot switch your primary member. So the one that you started out with, you cannot switch, as far to my knowledge.
No,
I don't know.
that's a true statement. You are locked into your first choice, which is
Yeah.
one thing that I get why they do it. They want you to feel connection to a character. It's maybe the main negative I have at this point, just because that one character does get a little bit over leveled. And like in my case, I started with Tressa, so using her in Therion is not my favorite thing because of what I was talking about before. But then I'm passing
Right.
all these purple chests, and it feels kind of it feels kind of weird to me.
Yeah.
But to the why I said no before, you can change your party, but you can only do it at a bar. So you go into the bar and talk to the barkeeper. That's how you actually change your party. You can't just do it on the fly out in the field or anything like that. They want you to plan it a little bit and set out
Hmm.
with a party.
All right, that's cool. Yeah, the thing that I liked about the game, like I said, I went in a little bit blind, and I wasn't sure exactly how it was gonna work out when you recruited some of the main characters from the game. So I started as the hunter Hannet, and I really like her. And as I was playing the game, I just kept progressing. I got a little lost. I don't know if it's for everybody, but for the hunter, there's a lot of options that you can go a lot of different places. So I just kept going and going, and eventually I ended up on Primrose's story. So now
Oh
I
wow,
have her
that's
on my
across
party.
the
Yeah.
map.
Yeah. Holy shoot.
So I'm definitely surprised and glad at how it works. I mean, you just have the main characters with you. Okay, it makes sense that there's it's up to 4 characters, which is good. I think that's good. 8 might have been too much, a little too crazy.
Yeah, I was curious originally before we played the demo. I was curious if they were going to do the thing kind of like Golden Sun did, where you can switch out your characters. You have a party of 4, but you can
Yeah.
just swap
Right.
them out on the fly. They didn't choose to do that. I don't really think that's a bad decision. I think they did fine with the way the game works. Especially all of the mechanics around the battle are just they have basically made this an old school RPG, but it's not. It doesn't have any of the really main headache points that those older games do,
Right.
Mm-hmm.
and that's really impressive. So a little bit on the history of this game. It was actually made by the same development team that made the Bravely series, Bravely Default being the first one, and then Bravely second. So what's notable about those games? They were on 3DS. Bravely Default was just personally, it was the first single player game I probably ever dropped 100 hours into a single playthrough on.
Whoa.
The mechanics of that game, it was very, very widely praised for a lot of kind of quality of life type choices that they made. For example, they added a slider that adjusts how frequently you encounter monsters, and you can just turn them on and off, and you could turn them all the way off, so you can literally run through the game and not encounter anything. Now, obviously, then you don't level and you don't get stronger, and when you come across a boss, then it's probably not going to go well, right?
Nope.
But it was nice. You'd have those moments where you're like, man, I just want to get out of here. I'm going to turn this down to 0 and just run, and you could do that. There was also, they did some interesting things with the battle system where if you defended, they called that defaulting, you would actually build up a battle point and then be able to spend that whenever. So you could go +4 or -4. You could do 4 separate actions. So you could literally input, as my first action, I want to attack this guy. As my second action, I want to use an item on this person. As my third action, I want to use this skill or magic or whatever, and so on. Very cool system, especially when you get a party of 4 characters, and especially in the late game, a lot of the enemies started using that in clever ways too, so the fights got really cool. What the reason I bring that up, and what I think impresses me, this is going to sound kind of backwards, but what impresses me most about Octopath is that this team did not sit on those mechanics. They didn't bring those in as, hey, everybody likes these, so we're just going to transfer these in directly. They didn't do that. They didn't want to do it. Like, there is no slider to turn off enemies. There's a couple items that you can either increase or reduce the number, but you can't turn it off completely. The battle system has been reworked to the point where you're using, it's kind of a similar thing. You're building up action points as you go, and then you can increase the power of attacks, and you can do like 4 attacks, but you can't do 4 separate actions. Right. So you got to plan it out a little bit better. You can power up any of your skills up to 4 times, but that just makes it do more damage. Right. So I'm impressed that they did not get complacent on, hey, people like this thing, so we're just going to port it into this game. They wanted Octopath to be, I can only assume that they wanted Octopath to be a more old school style RPG and appeal more to that audience, and goodness, they nailed that.
Oh yes,
they sure did.
Goodness, they really found a niche on that one.
It's like teaching no dog new tricks, and not just the combat, but also the art style. I mean, it is amazingly beautiful to look at. Like, the more I play the game, the more I love like some of the nuances of the 2.5D graphics. The sparkles in the water. I mean, it's just it's just amazing. Like, it's like looking at a piece of art, and you're the painter, and you're just like going through and seeing painting a picture, but also just seeing different parts of the world and using your imagination to go with that. So, and also the music, for me, the music is spot on. I find myself humming the boss theme every now and then, or the the main theme too. And I even have the CD in my car because I got the Wayfarer's edition.
Oh,
heck
man.
yeah! But I got pretty lucky though. It's because originally I got the standard edition, but then when I went to Best Buy the other day, I saw a Wayfarer's edition on the shelf, and I was like, "Holy shoot! Gotta get it! Is it free? I mean, not free, but is it free for me to get? So I have to pay for it. I gotta get it. You know what I mean?" And
yeah, that's not free.
I wish it were free, but I mean, there's no free lunch. So what I'm trying to say is that there was an unmarked. It seemed like an unmarked Octopath Traveler Wayfarer's edition, and then I was like, "Heck yeah, that's mine." Got Kevin on my name on it. So, but then the Best Buy employee said, "Nope, this has already been reserved." I was like, "Oh no!" But she said, "Well, there are 4 of these Wayfarer editions at the next Best Buy 4 miles north of here." I was like, "Holy shoot! Heck yeah! Sign me up!" So I basically took my copy, well, paid for it obviously, my standard edition, and I drove to that Best Buy and I exchanged it for a Wayfarer's edition. Took about a good 27.5 minutes. Don't ask me why I know. That's how I felt. 27.5 minutes. Actually, it was around 30 minutes because I had to wait to, for them to bring it out from the back and stuff. And it took a while, but then got what I wanted. Got my Wayfarer's edition, exchanged my standard edition, and then boom. And one thing I noticed is that when I opened the box and you see the pop art book, because originally I thought it was just one, art, but there's actually 8, and I was like, holy shoot, this is
Ooh,
awesome.
that makes
Yeah,
sense.
because then like when you see the Wayfarers edition, like I guess in the ad that they were showing, or just the pictures that they showed a while
Mhm.
back, it just only showed one pop art book, and it was just Primrose, which is cool. Primrose is cool, but I was thought maybe there are other ones, but it didn't really show, so I wasn't informed. And then yeah, I think it's decently worth it. So I mean, the fact that I have Best Buy Gamers Club unlocked, which everyone should get, by the way. And
Nobody can get it anymore.
oh no, oh no.
It's dead.
Yeah.
Let me rewind back. Jokes you can't get anymore.
Everyone should get it. Ha ha.
Oh man, don't complain to Kevin. Please don't complain to me. I apologize in advance. I
Send all
thought-
emails to nintendojumppodcast@gmail.com.
No haters, please. I can't take it. Oh no. But anyway, my point is that I think for what you get is pretty decent, and you get this nice coin that I'm actually holding right now. Like I'm just looking at back and forth, and just the quality of the coin and the cloth that comes with it, with the picture of the 8 characters from Octopath Traveler along with the map on the backside. It's pretty awesome. So anyway,
Yeah,
I didn't mean to digress.
No, I'm pretty jealous of that. But what you were saying about the music, to me, a lot of the music in this game doesn't feel like it belongs in a video game. And I mean that in
Right.
an excellent way. Like, so a lot of people kind of discount video game music. I don't agree with that statement, with
Me
what they
either.
say on it, but a lot of people are just like, yeah, it's video game music, whatever. This music is fantastic. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the area, especially where Hanet starts, is this piano and cello theme that is just, it's beautiful, and all the different areas sound distinct and they're awesome. I looked up the composer, and really he's not known for much. Like, this is I don't want to say it's his first foray, but he doesn't have a huge resume. Man, this soundtrack is amazing. Like, the soundtrack is just very, very well done.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. The boss. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, I'm done.
So real quick, one thing that I said, I think a couple weeks ago at this point, one thing that I said was I was very curious about exactly how they would be linking the characters together. In that, in the demo is pretty much you just, you started with a character, you went to somebody else's town, they give you a 5-second blurb, you jump on to help them, and boom, they're in your party, and then you travel around with that person. And that happens 8 times, right? Or 7 times, right? But I was curious, is there going to be an overarching story? Is there going to be, are they going to intertwine the tales so that they're, it's the super friends against this evil boss that's causing all these problems or anything like that? The answer is so far no. Like, and this is one sticking point that I've seen in some reviews. I have avoided spoilers myself, so I don't know exactly how the end of the game goes. I know I've heard rumors that there is a little bit of Super Friends Against the World very, very late in the game, and that's okay. But where I am now is this is a point that I was making, trying to say, if they do this, if they connect it and they have these intertwining stories, this is going to be like an incredible game. I'm here today saying this is an incredible game without that.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
And I'm not even making the point that I don't miss that. The point that I'm making is what they're actually doing with these stories. They have 8 so far. I haven't finished them, but they have 8 well-told stories that I'm finding myself personally caring about the characters within the stories.
Yes.
So you have to kind of make the initial leap of faith with, okay, these characters meet up and they want to travel together, which in the case of like Tressa and Therion, I don't really see why they would, but whatever. I'm willing to accept it, right? But as soon as you make that, and then these 8 characters are just supporting each other in their own tales, and then they're just weaving these little stories, these little personal, emotional stories for each character, and all the stories are different, and they're all, in my opinion, pretty well done at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I've almost done a complete 180 on that to start thinking that is actually a positive of this game, and I did not expect that going in at all. I really didn't. So the one thing that they're doing to kind of build the party and tell a little bit more of the story is the same thing that the Bravely series did, and even the Tales of games do, is that at certain points in each character's story, you can it'll pop up a little thing, press start to view travel banter, is I think what they call it.
Mm-hmm.
And what that is, when you do that, it'll have two characters talking to each other about what just happened in the story. And the first one or two of those I saw, I thought, okay, this is just generic. There's nothing really saying that is actually Tressa. That's just, that's a standard dialogue that they have Tressa speaking. But as those have continued, no, these are actually written for the characters, like Primrose and Ulbrich discussing their backgrounds with each other, relating to what the story is. And that, to me, that is gelling the entire game together. Like, that is why these characters are traveling together. They're actually getting along in these cool ways. And to me, that is actually fulfilling what I was hoping for, at the same time as telling these 8 smaller impact but more emotional stories. And I'm very, very pleased with how they're telling the stories.
Yes.
Which I would not have expected based on what I just said a couple weeks ago. But hey, that's where I am.
Yeah, and I echo the same sentiment, even though I'm not as far in the game as you are, but I echo the same sentiment in terms of having the little stories, just the 8 different stories, well written and just going their own ways. I think you could relate to how life is. It's not just about one big splash in the scene. It's more about the little things that matter. When I think of Octopath Traveler, this is going to be very off tangent, but I think about Battlefield, the not 5, Battlefield 4, and I'll get to that. But
very similar game, I can see it.
Very similar game, but I tell you this because Battlefield 4 focused a lot about World War One. A topic that usually doesn't really come up in games that often. And going into this game, besides the multiplayer, which is pretty decent, but if you play the single player, it's not about the end result. It was about the little stories that came within during the years of World War One. Whether there's a person who's trying to fight for his life and trying to escape this battle, or another person trying to heal the wounded and things like that. It's just these little stories that maybe they don't surmise into the end result of the war, but these are real people, real lives that have had some sort of impact in different parts of the world. And I think that in Octopath, I'm just trying to make that connection, because for me, the expectations of having all 8 stories intertwined to one, I think was really high for a lot of people who review the game, especially Kotaku's Jason Schreier, who I think he plays a lot of RPGs. He's obviously very opinionated on certain ones, but I think that it really comes down to expectations. And you see the other reviewers like Eurogamer, US Gamer, IGN, GameSpot, Polygon, all these, their expectations of having all 8 stories meshed into one wasn't really that high. So therefore, they were able to give, higher praise for the game overall. So I think it just comes down to expectation. And
I mean, to that point, like, if you look at the history of RPGs, particularly like more traditional JRPGs, there's kind of a cap to what they're going to be reviewed at, right? So between Final Fantasy 2 and then 4, Final Fantasy 3 and then 6, Chrono Trigger, Paper Mario, The Thousand Year Door, Super Mario RPG, all these games got reviews in the 80 to 90 range, pretty much, from various sources. These are some of the best RPGs ever, and we're going to get into that. But for whatever reason, everybody goes into an RPG expecting something a little bit different. Like, some people really want good battle mechanics. Some people really want a good story. Some people really want playability. It's the only game type that random encounter rate is actually brought up in reviews. It's that kind of thing. Like, people are so picky about it. It's not
Oh,
a
they
bad.
are.
It's not a bad thing. It's just you got to kind of hedge your expectations a little bit on what a game is going to be reviewed at. Which, by the way, if you look at what Octopath is currently getting reviewed, IGN put it at a 93. Metacritic, I haven't checked it recently, but it's sitting in mid 80s, right? That is about where some of the best RPGs ever sit. So
Right.
nobody should be angry about that. Nobody should be disappointed in the game about that. That's just
No.
that's where this genre fits, and that's just where it is. Specifically on the Kotaku one,
Yeah.
I don't want to start a war or anything. Everybody has their own opinion and expectations going in, and his are completely valid. His read very much like a guy who rushed through the game, didn't really appreciate it. I read that he spent, I think, 35 hours on the game.
30, I think it's like 36, 30 hours. Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
wow, that's really fast.
So to be blunt, I just completed chapter 2, which is less than halfway through the game. Not even accounting for some of the rumored post game stuff that I've kind of heard rumors on.
Ooh.
I'm currently sitting at 32 hours.
Oh.
So it's not. I don't think that the correct amount of time was given to the game to fully appreciate it. I don't really want to criticize him or anything. He did his own thing, and that's fine. That's fine. It didn't hit a good note with him. That's what he does as a job, and that's a very valid opinion. I get it.
Exactly.
It's helped a lot of people make a decision about the game, to either positive or negative, just by saying, does this review make sense to me? Do I want to use this to go the game? In my experience, I couldn't be much farther from his opinion on it.
And that's fine. And I think reviews in nature are very subjective, depending on the player, depending on, his or her experience playing RPGs and the expectations, the way they want a certain RPG to play. So I think that it goes hand in hand. But there are some things that he did say that are really good, such as the combat. So I think that's pretty universal with Octopath. But yeah, I agree. I think that this sort of game deserves to be played a lot with more hours, a bit more thorough. In that, that's how maybe you can make a better judgment. But again, right, as you said, everybody has their own style of reviewing, and Jason has his own valid points. So I think we'll just leave it at that.
No, I think he's great at what he does. I just
He is. Yeah.
you will always disagree with a reviewer from time to time, and this is the game where I kind of did. That's just where I am.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to the RPG genre being one of the most beloved in the industry.
Right.
So it's very hard to make an RPG that everybody likes. It's very hard to make one that is going to be well reviewed or consistently reviewed. I think
Mhm.
it's because, RPGs are very popular and very rewarding for the people that keep at it.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and wrap this up. Any final comments that you guys want to throw out?
I did want to ask you guys how you feel about the use of Old English in the game. I know for the hunter Hannet, I believe her is the one that uses the most. And I myself, I like it. I think it enhances the story, but I can see how it might be a little too much for some people. Sometimes I find myself asking if that's a real word or if it's a little bit made up just to add to the feel of it. But how do you guys feel about that?
I didn't mind Hannet at all. I actually have more of a complaint with Ophelia. Ophelia, because there was, well, spoiler alert, in chapter 1, I guess not really a spoiler, but she likes to say, Your Excellency, Your Excellency, Your Excellency. Like, oh my goodness, like, stop saying that same thing. Like, holy shoots. Seriously, man. Like, I just cannot, I think hearing Hannet speak Old English is like heaven compared to hearing Ophelia. And
I like when she starts a battle and she says, I'm not sure exactly what she says, but she says something like, the hunteth beginning.
Yeah.
And it's just, it cracks me up a lot. Like, I don't mind it. It's definitely a thing. It's a thing that annoyed some people. That's very valid. I can see that. And all of the people from her town speak like that too. So there's a lot
Yes.
of it in there. And to Sergio's point, a lot of it is made up, but that's okay. You know, it's all in the effort of world building, which
Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
they're world building the crap out of this game because the world is actually really cool. Like there's a lot of stuff, a lot of different peoples and dialects and all sorts of things here. So that I think they've done a really good job, especially with the voice acting that's there and the writing that they've put into it, where they didn't really need great writing on a lot of people. They've actually kind of gone that extra mile. So I'll take a few that are just kind of silly and a few that are serious, and you kind of meet in the middle, and that's great. One thing I love, and it's a little bit separate, but the same idea. Tressa's mom has a Minnesota accent, and it's just hilarious
Whoa.
to me. It's really funny, and I don't really understand it, but I just I accept it. I move on. It's great.
Nice. So that's our thoughts on Octopath, and it's selling out everywhere. It's selling really well.
Mm-hmm.
There are talks already of the developer seriously considering making more games for the Switch, and at this point, I think it's pretty much a guarantee.
Yeah.
So we're in for something great, I think, with the Switch, maybe with an Octopath series, or if it just becomes a series of different games instead of just Octopath 2 or something like that. That's great. Either way, it's a good developer. They make good RPGs. And speaking of RPGs, we want to discuss some of our favorites from all time.
Booyah.
And
Yeah.
how about if Kevin gets us going?
Oh yeah, here we go. Oh, one time, gonna do this one time. One of my favorite RPGs is actually the first one I've ever played in my entire existence. It is called Super Mario RPG: Legend of the Seven Stars. Woo!
That was your first RPG?
That was, you heard it from me. That was my first RPG.
Wow, that's a cool game to start with.
It is because for me, I actually 5 feet away from where I'm sitting, I still have that game right here. I can point it out right here if you guys had, video footage. I mean, I have it right here, but besides that, I was really, and I'm still into the Mario type of games. And when my parents bought me the RPG game, I was like, whoa, what is this? Like, this is interesting. Like, it's not so much. Well, there's a little platforming, but it's more. It's like this RPG. Like, what is it? What is this type of game? I control 3 characters. It's one of my favorites because it blends Mario into a new genre that I was never exposed to. So basically, the game is about Mario trying to save Princess Toadstool. I don't know why it's Toadstool. I usually think it's Peach, but
No, that's
anyway.
what she used to be. At the time, that's what she was called. That was
Oh,
her name.
really?
Yep.
Oh, well, there you go. Let me retract back. Jokes. Her original is Princess Toadstool. Anyway, so thanks, Daryl. I didn't know that. So basically, you have Mario trying to save Princess Toadstool from Bowser, and then he does, but then he doesn't after about a few seconds because his big sword comes down, boom, and then pretty much just pierces through the castle. And then all of these stars just like, they spread out all over the world, and you have to repair the Star Road. So you have to get all the 7 stars and repair the Star Road and get rid of the sword. So the main boss is not Bowser. I'm going to say spoiler alert. If you haven't played this game, I apologize, but the main boss is Smitty. Smitty is the one who pretty much controls he's within the sword, and he's the one who terrorizes all over the world, and it's a pretty awesome game where you get to you have your characters like Mario, Princess Toadstool, and Bowser. You get to use Bowser. Ho ho ho! Pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's right.
Unless
Yeah.
I'm mistaken, that was the first time he was ever a good character in a Mario game. Like the first time he was ever playable as like a member. Like you could play as him in a. I'm trying to think whether that came before or after Mario Kart, but you know what I'm trying to get at.
I know what you mean. Yeah. So Mario Kart was released before, but that wasn't really a hero villain type of thing.
Right.
But this is probably the first time where he was actually part of the good side. And so you have those three characters, but you also have Mallow, this cloud type of person. Well, clouds isn't like, the clouds in the sky, not Cloud Strife. Different game, different story. We'll get into it later if we have to. Okay, so well, actually, side note, I do have a action figure of Cloud Strife 5 feet away from me. Anyway, segue. So there's another character called Gino. Now, Gino is this doll puppet thing. I'm probably saying it wrong, but it's like you meet him in this forest, and originally he's a doll, but he comes to life after something happens, and then he uses this kind of blast tool. It's like a gun from his arm. It's so awesome. He's my favorite character, Gino.
Yeah, me too.
And yeah, and so I guess for me, the gameplay was pretty simple to understand for an 8-year-old back then, an 8-year-old Kevin Sett back then, and it was just one of those games that I just grew into playing like nonstop, and just going through the worlds and gotta get the stars, man, gotta get the stars, and different bosses and the music, it's like da 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 da. Yeah, I could go on that for days, but anyway, have you guys played this game?
Yeah, it was actually going to be on my list too.
Nice.
I think this is an interesting one for you to start out on, because it changed a lot of things about the genre. Like, unless I'm mistaken, I probably am, but this is at least one of the first games that had like action commands on the attack, so you didn't just hit attack. You had to hit a button with good timing to get this extra bonus damage, right?
Absolutely.
It was at least one of the first games to do that. It was a Mario game developed by Square, which that alone is weird. Like, especially when you consider like just a few years in the future, Nintendo and Square really split ways for a number of years. Like, this is one of their really, really good collaborations right before that. This is Nintendo's flagship character being developed by somebody else.
Yeah, and to your point with the time attacks, you can time your physical attacks. You can also time your blocks too. So when you're defending, or when you're about to have a physical attack hit you, you can just time it just right so that you don't take as much damage. However, this doesn't apply to AOEs or area effects. Pretty much, it hits all the characters. You're not able to time that at all. But yeah, I mean, it is one of the first games that has that sort of feature. So,
but yeah, and that the story went places, and there were a ton of secrets in the game. Like, I still haven't gotten everything in the game. There's a lot of really, really hard challenges in there that some people have gotten. I probably never will, but I go back and play it every few years. It's a very good game.
Wait, can I spoil one secret or no?
I mean, the game is over a decade old. Go ahead.
All right, I'm just gonna say it. Spoiler. There is a Final Fantasy boss music contained in the game, specifically Final Fantasy IV's boss music, when you are fighting against a boss called Cluex, 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 and it's one of the hardest bosses in the game. And then it has the music like da 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 ba da da ba da 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 da. Yeah, man.
Yeah, I actually did beat him recently. I hadn't.
Oh, you did?
I hadn't in my entire time playing the game, and I went back and beat him recently.
Nice.
That's a cool fight too.
It is, and it's just those little tidbits and those secrets. It's just awesome to discover. But yeah, overall, I think it's definitely had a huge impact on my RPG life, which led me to Final Fantasy games, which we'll get into later.
Nice. And I think a lot of it has to do, like you said, the first RPG that you played. It is also my first RPG that I played, although
Really?
I didn't finish it.
Ooh.
Yeah, I just rented it back in the day, but I still remember it as the first RPG that I played, and I really liked. One little complaint that I have is that it doesn't let you have Yoshi in your party. I'm a Yoshi fan, so I wanted
That's
Yoshi in the
true.
game. It has all the other Mario characters, but not Yoshi.
Dude, there's a whole island of Yoshis.
You can ride one.
Right. And there's also Boshi, which a lot of people don't know, but you guys probably do, yeah.
I remember Boshi. He was cool.
So there was that one of your first RPGs. I'm just guessing if you guys both like it, it might be because of that. It's one of your first RPGs.
I mean, no, actually, the first RPG I can remember playing is Final Fantasy, the first one.
Oh,
Wow.
At
Yeah.
the age that my dad was actually leveling the characters for me. Refer to the last podcast about that. But yeah, he would hook me up with a perfectly grinded team that I could go wreck the game with, and that was pretty cool.
Ooh.
But anyways, so that was my first one, and then I think if I'm remembering right, I think I played Final Fantasy 2 before I played Mario RPG.
Mm-hmm.
If not more than that, I'm trying to remember, but it was on Super Nintendo, which was kind of in my formative years, so it was one of the first ones, but
Right.
it was not the first. That's kind of a fascinating way to take the series, just because, or take the genre, I want to say, because that particular game changed so much about the genre.
Right, right. So one of my first RPG that I actually completed is in a way the spiritual successor to Super Mario RPG. It is Paper Mario, the first one for the Nintendo 64.
Okay.
So it is very similar. It has the action-based gameplay. It has a lot of things going for it. However, it has a lot of graphical styles dealing with paper, as in the name.
Yes.
So, and they do it really well, and it's very nice. And also the ability to see the enemies before you engage in battle. And not only that, but you're also able to surprise them with a sneak attack. And if you're successful, you start the battle by dealing an attack right from the get-go. I love that about it.
Yeah, I actually I was kind of mad at Paper Mario, and it wasn't really warranted. The game I thought was great, but they called it originally Super Mario RPG 2. And it was
Ooh.
very much not the sequel to that game, and
Right.
that's okay.
Right.
It was a good game in its own right, and I kind of unfairly judged it, but I still kind of, when I think about that game, that's the feeling I get. That said, the sequel to Paper Mario, The Thousand Year Door, absolutely fantastic game. Like, fantastic game. I played that on GameCube, and it was extremely good. I still rank it as one of the best RPGs I've ever played. I actually went back and rebought a copy of it fairly recently, so I've got it. I don't play it every once in a while, but I think I like that series. And I actually like that series better than the Mario and Luigi series. I know a lot of people don't, but just for whatever reason, it hits more boxes for me, in the writing and the story and the characters and where they go with it.
Right, right. Speaking of the writing and going back to the first Paper Mario, I remember it very fondly because it helped me learn English in a way. I
Ooh.
played it when
Nice.
I was, yeah, when I
That's
was first
awesome.
here in the US, back when I was 13. And I did take some English courses back in Mexico, but this game, it has a lot of text like any good RPG, and it really helped me. I would hear a lot of phrases that I didn't understand at first what they meant or what the context was. For example, I always remember learning the word folks in that game, meaning like people. So yeah, I would ask professors or friends, hey, what does this mean? What does that mean? And I still always remember Paper Mario taught me English.
That is such a
That's
cool story.
awesome.
Yeah, and I did play the sequel. Uh, I liked it, but I like the first one better. One thing I do like about the sequel is that all the support characters are pretty much different.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't now at this point, as far as quality of game, I don't really separate those two very much. I still do think Thousand Year Door is the better game, just me personally. But
Mhm.
there's also a lot of like we kind of discussed. There's a lot of personal feelings on both of our sides that are giving those games some importance to us, and both are excellent choices. Like, I'm just gonna say that.
Right, right. And the sequel does have Playboy Yoshi, which is
Ooh.
great.
It's true, and he's little and feisty. Um,
Right.
One of my favorite things about the Thousand Year Door, the second game, is while you're playing it, Luigi actually is also going on an adventure
Yes,
that
that's
kind of
right.
rivals yours, but you don't see any of it. Like, you just keep talking to him, and he's picking up support characters that are kind of similar to yours, but they all look shady. And if you talk to them, they like all have bad intentions toward him and such. And, like, just that little story plus a lot of things, like, for me, like Paper Mario and Mario and Luigi, the actual RPG stories. So I'm not really talking about the more recent Paper Mario games, but Mario and Luigi is kind of a little bit more in your face as a series. Like it's more slapstick, uh, straightforward
Hmm.
humor. Those games are very funny. I'm not at all trying to degrade that, but the Paper Mario series had this subtlety to it that still strikes me as really really funny and really well written and great. So that's really what gives it the edge in my opinion. Plus, I like the support characters.
Yeah, definitely. That's why it upsets me that Paper Mario was the series that was chosen to take the RPG out of it,
Yeah, me
you know,
too.
instead of Mario and Luigi. Not nothing against it. I still love those games, even though the last one was sort of a mix of the two and it wasn't really all that together. But Paper Mario Sticker Star for the 3DS, I just knew that it was a Paper Mario game, so I went in blind again. Big
Ooh.
mistake by then because, man, was I disappointed. I don't know.
Oh
To this
no.
date, I think the battles in that game are worthless. I mean, people tell me they're not, but to me they are.
Yeah, and so Color Splash, the newest one on Wii U, kind of had the same system, but it was a little bit more refined. I
Right.
thought it did it a little bit better, and people made the same argument for Color Splash that the battles don't really mean much. There's a slight leveling mechanic, but for the most part, that's actually a true statement. Um, it just wasn't ever really treated as an RPG. Like it has
Yeah.
RPG battles, but the game is really not. It's more of an adventure type, almost puzzly game at times. So the battles are about as meaningful as they are in Super Mario Brothers, the platformer, right? Like you don't have to jump on a Goomba. You can if you want, but it's not, it doesn't
Right.
really do anything. It's kind of the same in Color Splash. I actually really liked Color Splash as a game, but it's not an RPG. It's just not.
Right. And I do want to play it knowing what I'm going into now. Because, going into Sticker Star expecting a full-fledged RPG, that was a really big letdown.
Yeah.
But Kevin, do you have any other RPGs? It can be either a game or a series that you want to talk about?
Yeah, so first of all, I apologize for I have not played Paper Mario or Mario Luigi. I know, it's a crime. Give me a red card. But yeah, but
Send all
it was
hate
just,
emails to.
oh no, not again. It's like strike two. No, but for me, I was just wondering, has any of the Paper Mario games have they aged well? Like, what do you think of like, what's your favorite part about these sort of games? Like, has it aged well? Because I know like games like Chrono Trigger is one of my favorites, and it's aged pretty well since then. But like, what do you guys think about that?
I think they have. I think they, especially because of the art style, is
Mm.
very unique in all of them. I definitely think they have. The stories are good. The gameplay is classic and flows really well. What do you think, Daryl?
I'd play an HD version right now.
Ooh.
I mean, I think it looks great on GameCube. I'd love it on Switch. Hey, Nintendo, I know you listen to our podcast. Can you just do that?
Just make that jump. Oh,
Oh,
oh. With that being said, I'm gonna answer Sergio's question. There is one RPG that I am truly, truly, that I truly embrace with three trulies or four. So it is Final Fantasy VI. It is my favorite RPG of all time as of
Oh,
right now, July 18th, 2018. My favorite, and I say that because there is a plethora of characters. At least actually, there's 12 characters plus two you can get, and or they're secret. And the thing about it is that besides the music and the art style, it really encompassed the story of saving the world, but it did in a very interesting way. You have all these characters who had their own personal struggles in life. Whether it's Edgar Figaro, who is trying to as one of the leaders of the Returners, which is like this squad that is trying to take down the empire and all that. It's he's struggling with the notion that he has to rule Figaro because that's his duty. And the thing about him is that he has a twin brother named Sabin. And there was one of the things that really caught my eye and actually made me tear up a little bit at one point was when in there's one part of the game where you know Edgar and Sabin, there was a situation where they were trying to figure out who's going to be the next king, who's going to be the ruler of Figaro,
hmm.
and it was portrayed in a negative light because once you're a ruler, you're a ruler for life, and there's just so many responsibilities that you have to take on, and obviously in when you're playing the game, you realize that Sabin he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to be the next ruler of Figaro. So Edgar has this coin that they tossed, and the reason why they're doing this is because I believe it's their dad that passed away, and they had to find a new king. So Edgar tossed up a coin, and I think Sabin he called, I think it was heads. It was heads, but then it was actually tails. So Edgar had to become the ruler. But you don't find out later on that the coin's a two-sided coin. It was both tails. I might have gotten that wrong, but that's the concept. The concept was that the coin is a rigged
Oh.
coin, and that Edgar made the sacrifice to become the ruler so that Sabin can have his freedom. And that was a really interesting moment in the game where I'm like, wow, that's brotherly love, that sacrifice. It is very cheesy and corny, but I mean that's what makes these sort of games. And these sort of stories that happen within Final Fantasy VI, I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah, there's a lot of that in that game. Like a lot of these little subtle stories, and like recently the director, I think, of Octopath mentioned that it was kind of a spiritual successor to Final Fantasy VI. It doesn't really feel like that,
Mm-hmm.
but I can kind of see what he's saying when you talk about this kind of thing, like the little kind of emotional stories. There's a line there you can kind of draw.
Yeah, and it's amazing, and like you mentioned, everybody has their own sort of little stories that they're going through. For example, Locke Cole, he's one of the main characters. He lost the love of his life, and he was trying to revive her, but she's like, it's all good. Well, she didn't say it's all good, but that's pretty much, I'm paraphrasing. It's all good, go on your life. You gotta be strong. You gotta be strong, Locke. Things like that. And one of the things I also like is the music. My one of my favorite tunes is Coin Song. Have you guys heard of Coin Song?
Yeah.
It's one of the. It kind of goes like do 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 do. Oh man, for the
We're
third
getting a
time,
lot of music in this one.
for the third time, I'm gonna say this. I can go on about this tune for days, but yeah. Anyway, um, so yeah, what do you guys think of Final Fantasy VI? What do you guys think about the game in general?
Go ahead, Daryl, because sadly I have yet to play it. I know
Oh
it's a
no.
masterpiece. I can tell, and everyone agrees on that. So I'm in for something great whenever I have the time for it, for sure.
Definitely.
So yeah, I think Final Fantasy VI is an incredible game. I do, and I think probably putting it at or near the top of the Super Nintendo RPG list is the right call. All that said, I'm a Final Fantasy IV guy. Uh,
That is a really good Final Fantasy.
yeah, well, it was released as 2, and it was released as kind of a really crappy port. It wasn't very well translated. It
Yeah.
was missing some abilities. Not that I knew that at the time, right? But
Right, right.
for whatever reason, and not to just railroad your game, but Final Fantasy IV had this story arc of you're playing as the bad guy at the start, and he kind of comes to the realization that he is the bad guy, and then he goes through a number of steps and literally climbs a mountain called Mount Ordeals to
Yeah.
basically atone for his sins almost.
Mhm.
And when he does that, the way they do that in game is they literally change his character class, they change the way he looks, they change his
Mhm.
moveset, everything that he
Right,
can do.
right.
And the initial impression is, man, he's really weak now. Like, you took away all my powerful stuff, and now he's terrible. But then he grows to be like this really powerful light based character instead of the dark knight that he was. And
Mhm.
that mixed in with a host of really memorable characters and events and such as Rydia, the girl whose village you literally destroy kind of unwillingly, but you destroy at the beginning of the game and then kind of take her under your wing. And then she grows up as your party's best magic user. Uh, with her and the ninja Edge, who's seeking revenge and such. Like, I love the characters in that game. I love the bosses in that game, and just the overall story of it really strikes a note with me. So for me, it'll always be Final Fantasy IV for the Super Nintendo RPGs. That said, going back to the actual topic at hand, Final Fantasy VI was, as far mechanically, it was a refinement of everything that 4 did. Like it worked really, really well mechanically. The story was excellent. The music was excellent. So very much a nice cap off of Final Fantasy on the system. I also like Final Fantasy V, which was
Yes,
not
yeah.
actually released here until years later, as far as in the form of anthologies and a re-release on Game Boy Advance. It was actually a very solid game, underrated in the discussions of the other two.
Hmm.
It is, and it's even though it didn't have as many characters as 4 or 6, it focused on those 5 characters very well, and there's the concept of legacy, and what I mean by that is, when you have the main character, Butts or Barts. I think in Japanese they call him Butts, but anyway, so Butts,
His name is literally Butts.
Butz.
Z.
Yeah. So, there's part of the story where, 30 years ago, his dad and 3 other people, one of them which you will be able to use as a main character, um, you know, 30 years ago they defeated this evil villain called X Death, and then they thought they sealed him away, but then 30 years later, he came back, and it's just this, okay, now it's my turn. I gotta like father like son sort of thing, and but then you follow other characters too, where you have 2 princesses. One of them became a pirate, and the other one stayed in the castle, and then you have the old grandfather who was one of the original you know characters who beat Xdeath 30 years ago, and then you get to use him. His name is Galuf, Galuf, and then later on he uses his granddaughter when he passes away. So, yeah, it is an underrated classic, and I wish there were more attention to it, but
Yeah,
it's
I think of the 3, 4, 5, and 6, I think it is probably the best in terms of battle mechanics because it had a full job system way before that
yes,
became popular in the series, in the
Right.
it did.
genre, I want to say.
Hmm.
But it was very, very good, and actually a lot of the things that they did in that game are still being used almost directly today. Like, so it really set a lot of groundwork, and it's a very interesting game to play at this point. Probably the worst story wise, in my opinion, but
Yeah.
the best to actually play. So it kind of fits in this weird envelope for me, but it's a very good game.
Yeah, and there's actually one skill that I really liked. I hope I get this correct. It's either red or blue magic. I think it's red magic, or maybe blue, where you can actually learn skills from enemies that you face, which I thought was really nice because
Yeah,
then
that's blue.
it's blue. Okay, cool. So blue magic, and you're able to learn skills from different enemies, and it's just a different take from the black magic with different spells like the fire and ice and thunder. Then you have the white magic as such as the healing. So it's a different take, and I think in later Final Fantasies has been heavily adopted from that one bit. So good stuff.
Yeah. So going to other, so it turns out the Super Nintendo was an extremely good console for RPGs. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I know I'm breaking this news now, but it was very good. It had many that a lot of people consider some of the best of all time, and
Right.
one of those that's always on that list. It's always rightfully on that list. Everybody loves it. Is Chrono Trigger. Uh,
Dun dun dun.
Elephant in the room. I am not the biggest fan of Chrono Trigger. So,
Oh.
and it's not that I don't like the game, and I actually do like the game, but it has the same problem that the original Xenoblade had for me, in that I pick the game up, I'm all gung ho, yeah, let's do it, let's go, and I get maybe a quarter of the way through the game, and then ooh, this other game looks cool. I drop it, and I never go back. I've restarted Chrono Trigger 4 times at this point. I will probably never beat it, and that that kind of that saddens me a little bit because I feel like I'm maybe missing out, but that's just what my style is, I guess. I don't know, for whatever reason the game doesn't click with me.
You're not alone in not being able to complete it. I mean, I like the game a lot, but I was 90%. You know, I towards completion. I finished 90% of the game, and then the other 10% I just played a game called Radiant Historia, which I
Oh.
have.
Oh.
Yes, which I actually have 5 feet away from where I'm sitting. who the music was composed by Yoko Shimomura. Hope I said her name right. Who made the music for Kingdom Hearts? Fun fact. So yeah. Anyway, Chrono Trigger. Back to Chrono Trigger. Chrono Trigger. It is a really awesome game, which I finished, and the music is just
Oh,
amazing.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I could hum that for days, but I
The
think I'll
music
save
is
it for
really,
later.
really good. Like, I've actually listened to the soundtrack despite not playing the game. It's really good.
Yes.
Yeah, one of the more memorable ones is ba da 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 da
Number
da
4, everyone.
Yeah, I know. I can't help myself though. I'm really big, like you, Daryl. I am really big on video game music,
Yeah.
and I find it very interesting that some people dismiss it for whatever reason, because video game music has a lot. It requires a lot of technical ability, to be honest. I mean, there are certain pieces that get very into the arpeggios and just the different chords and progressions, and it's not easy to play. I'll tell you that. There are certain ones that just oh my goodness. There is one. I think it's Secret of the Forest. Same. I think that I said it right. In the same game, which I would listen to nonstop sometimes during work days, and anyway, I won't hum that one. I'll save it for later. But because I know I've been humming way too much. But yeah, it's overall pretty good game that has aged well, and hopefully one day I'll be able to finish it. But I got a lot of games on my backlog. Oh man.
Yeah, and then also on Super Nintendo, I'm kind of disregarding the Breath of Fire series, although I've heard really good things about the second one in particular. I just never played it.
Right.
But also on the Super Nintendo was Earthbound, which
Yes.
Earthbound is honestly, it's a very strange game. Like, it's really weird. It's unnecessarily hard at the beginning. The powers and such don't really make perfect sense. The story is odd. The characters are weird. The art style and music and everything is super weird in the game.
Right.
That said, as you're playing it, you're feeling nostalgic, and I don't understand how it does that while being such a strange, almost off-putting game. But in particular, going back to music, the home theme, which also shows up in the Onett stage in Smash Brothers, the home theme inspires feelings in me that it takes me back to a certain time in my life, not even when I was playing the game, and I don't know how it does it. I think what the game does do is really, really cool in that it meshes a lot of things that don't really mesh together all that well, but it still does it, and it still makes you feel like this is a whole experience, and this is a worthwhile experience to have had. So I feel better to have played and beaten that game, even though if I look back at the individual areas, I'm just like, man, that game is super weird.
Yeah, personally, I've never played it, but I've watched people play, and yeah, I can from outside looking in, there are some really interesting qualities of the game, but nevertheless, it definitely deserves to be one of the classics.
So what about you, Sergio? You got another game to bring up?
So one of the things that I like about RPGs, or at least the ones that go ahead and do this, is when a game kills off one of the main characters and they carry through with it. That was sort of my complaint
Ooh.
with Final Fantasy IV or Final Fantasy II. You may remember that a lot of the characters die or they turn into stone or something, and then at the end of the game, everyone is back and like nothing happened. They don't even explain how they got back there, and that kind of bothers me. I think that takes away from the story. That kind of it lessens the experience for me. I may be a little picky on that regard, but it makes the game worse if they do that.
Oh, that makes sense.
No,
With the game that didn't do that, which is, I think, what I consider the best RPG, not personally my favorite, is Final Fantasy VII.
yes.
And
Yeah.
Wait,
as I'm sure everyone
Did
knows,
somebody die in Final Fantasy VII?
No, not at all. That's why I don't like it. No.
Spoiler.
So yeah, one of the main characters does die in the game, and back then, I kept playing. I was upset, but I kept playing, thinking, she's gonna come back. She has to. The characters that die come back. That was the standard back then.
But she doesn't.
But no, she never does. And that was the very first time that a game made me tear up and shed a bunch of tears actually,
Oh wow, yeah.
because they just did it so perfectly, and you're always hoping that Aerith comes back, and she never does. And I think they did it perfectly.
Well, I mean, it was at a time where it wasn't exactly the internet exploding, but the ripples that occurred because of that were wide and deep, right? So
Yes.
I would say they did something right there.
Right, right. And Final Fantasy VIII is also a great RPG. I think they're like head to head two of the most defining RPGs and great games overall. Very, very well polished. I think if I had to give the nod to either of them, it would be 7, simply because of the story and how they went through with killing off Aerith and not bringing her back.
Fun fact: Final Fantasy VIII is my first Final Fantasy ever that I've ever played.
Ooh.
And then I went backwards. Then I
So
went
we-
forwards a little bit.
We have learned that Kevin plays RPGs in weird orders.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna hum another tune now.
Oh, no.
Let's see.
Okay, so we're basically focusing, like, Final Fantasy is obviously like it. I'm trying to come up with it is pretty much the series for RPGs thus far, and
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's the only one. I'm not even saying it's the best one. But when you think RPG, or specifically Japanese RPG, Final Fantasy has to be in the conversation, right? But outside of that, and since that, there's a couple ones I do want to call out. First of which would be the Golden Sun games.
Yes.
Specifically the Game Boy Advance ones. I thought they were developed by Camelot, the team that is currently stuck on Mario Tennis and golf for the past number of years.
Yep.
I thought that the games were fantastic, and I thought they played really well. They were really, really good music, really good art styles, really good battle systems, everything. And then there was a sequel on DS that didn't do as well, and the series just died. And I'm really hoping it's not fully dead, but I'm glad I played those games. I think they're excellent.
Yeah, and to your point with Golden Sun, one of the things that I really liked is the Jin. So the little
Yes.
those, what do you call those? They're Jin. Is there
Yeah.
like a,
Yes.
okay, we're
It's
just calling it Jin.
It's pronounced Pokemon.
Oh, Pokemon. Okay. All right. So these little Pokemon. So these little goobly gobbly thingamabobbers. They serve to be used as summons that you can attack with what depending on what they can do. They can do a physical attack. They can do a buff, a debuff. And then depending on how many Jin you use, depending on the element, whether it's water or Earth, Mercury, Mars, Venus, and Jupiter. Yes. Okay. Ooh, I didn't mean to do that, but Jupiter. So depending on the combination of Jin you use to do that initial attack, you can do a summon that will summon this huge character from legends of different stories you've read in Greek mythology or different things like that. And
it was actually Norse. It was based on Norse mythology. Like, they had Ragnarok and like Odin and things like that.
Oh, my bad. Let me retract back. Jokes. It's not Greek mythology. It's Norse. Oh man. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you're right. It's now I remember. Oh man. But so yeah. Anyway.
I thought that was really cool at the time. That's the only reason I remember it. It was I was kind of big into Norse mythology for a little bit, just in thinking it was kind of neat and kind of researching it, and the fact that this game was pulling a lot from that, I thought was neat.
Yeah, I mean and I don't know any other, well, besides Banner Saga, sort of, not really, but I don't know any other game that references Norse mythology.
Yeah, certain things do in Final Fantasy, like there is a Fenrir, and some of the summons and such will but Golden
Right.
Sun may have been a little bit more forefront with it.
Right. Yeah, and I would not mind playing Golden Sun again on the Switch. So let's go Nintendo.
There we go.
Yes.
You've already failed with F-Zero. I'm just kidding. So Golden Sun is still viable. Well, I'm just gonna put it out there. I still love F-Zero, and hopefully they'll have a remake. Anyway, back to RPGs. Yeah, that's cool. Golden Sun.
Nice.
I'm
nice.
gonna pitch something to you. What about an F-Zero RPG?
Yes. Yo.
Anyways,
I'll know. Whoa, hold on. We'll take this offline. We will take this offline.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
So we would be utterly remiss to finish this out without mentioning maybe the largest RPG ever. And if you're not thinking the right way, maybe you're racking your brain right now for what it is, but I actually just mentioned it. It is Pokemon.
Dun dun dun.
So what do you guys want to say about Pokemon? Because there's a lot.
Yeah, so when we were planning this podcast, we were talking about which RPGs we wanted to discuss, and I remember asking, do we count Pokemon as an RPG? And I didn't mean it in a bad way. I only asked because Pokemon it's sort of its own genre in a way.
Mm-hmm.
It is an
Yeah.
RPG, but it is so specific and it is so different. I mean, technically, that was the first RPG that I played,
Mm-hmm.
but I sort of consider it its own genre. And to have come this far, more than 25 years, and the series is still kicking, and the games are still great, and they're switching it up with Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee. Pokemon is huge, and I definitely agree that if we consider it an RPG, and it is the greatest series.
It is, and it's just having this sort of worldly phenomena and just this craze of being able to use these creatures to be able to battle against others, and in a very respectable, casual way. It definitely had a huge impact on my life. Especially, I remember in fourth grade we had a Pokemon club, which with me and some other friends that we made, and we'd talk about everything Pokemon, everything. Just oh my goodness, what'd you see in red that you didn't see in blue? It's like, oh well, I got Blastoise. Well, whatever. I got Venusaur. Like, no, I got Charizard. And there's Mewtwo. Like, oh, what about that Mew thing? And I'm like, oh my goodness. Like,
Yeah, it really steered into the wind of like the playground conversations and things like that. Like,
Yes.
especially with the trading built in and the dual
Oh,
versions.
yeah.
Like it was
Right.
it was very ahead of its time. But it also hit at a really good time. So I don't know that I really agree with that statement, but it definitely was a trendsetter for a number of these things. That it was
Yes.
taking these conversations that people have had from like, I mean, the original Legend of Zelda. People have been talking about, oh, you can burn this bush and find this secret dungeon, that kind of thing. But they took that and actually made it interactive and a social game in a way, and
Right.
it hit like crazy and blasted off.
like Team Rocket. Yeah.
Yep.
But one of the things that I found was disappointing, and I don't know if this happened with you guys, but a lot of my friends who used to play Pokemon, they just played Red, Blue, and Yellow. They didn't play the next generation with Gold and Silver, or the next one with Ruby and Sapphire. They just stuck with the 151 original Pokemon. And it was interesting because some of the Pokemon in other generations, they were pretty awesome. Like, I mean, Blaziken, man. Blaziken Blaze. Like, who doesn't like that kind of Pokemon, man? Like, anyway, I don't know. That's my experience. I don't know about you guys. Have you guys?
Yeah, I've noticed that with each generation, more people drop off, and you see it like my cousin dropped off, and then my friend and Danny dropped off, and depending on the generation, more people do. But the one of the most recent ones, which were Sun and Moon, they really changed things up on that one, and I don't want to say it was for the best, but I appreciate the changes. And of course, with Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee, they're taking that in even in a more different way. If you could imagine that, it's like a tangent of a tangent in a way.
Yeah.
And of course, we're getting a core Pokemon experience for the Switch next year, and
Yes.
hopefully they continue experimenting with new things while keeping the core of the series in the parts that work, and just refining those and changing things to make it more interesting, to keep people playing and to bring people back.
Yeah, I mean it's it's one of those games that every version of the game is kind of an iteration on the past one, and that's an oversimplification, and it's not completely true. But a lot of the games play really similar to each other, so
Yes.
they play really similarly, but they have a new set of characters. So I think naturally you're gonna see some attrition, and then you're gonna also see some kids growing up that this new core Pokemon game is the first game that the first Pokemon game they're gonna play. So they're gonna feel a lot of attraction to those characters and not the original 151. But
Right.
there's a not insignificant subset of people that really identify with the first 151 and
Mm-hmm.
really kind of fell off after that, or don't really include them as much. There's some people who've
Yes.
memorized all of them and can recite them to you.
Yep.
but it's just I just think that's one of the risks that the series has. And Pokemon Company actually seems to know this, because they keep going back to those 151 to
Yes.
XY did it, and now they're doing it again with Let's Go, and
Right.
they keep popping back up because they know, hey, these are the characters that really really sell, these are the characters that people really love, so let's keep doing it. And I'm interested to see what the future state of the series is for that reason in particular.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so with that, I think we should probably wrap it up. Obviously, this was all of the best RPGs, and no other games that are not on this list should ever be considered. So take it from me, you don't need to play any game that we didn't discuss. No, I mean, so speaking honestly, right? There's so many really good RPG series. There's no way we can list them all. There are people who are tied to the Lufia series and the Etrian Odyssey series, and oh man, Persona and Shin
Oh
Megami
yeah.
Tensei, and
Right.
there's way too many to list. Obviously, we couldn't focus on them, but we were kind of focusing on the games that we think had a big significance on our life, and also on games like Octopath Traveler, which are kind of harkening back to these older games. So that's why we try to focus on it. If we didn't catch your favorite RPG series, I'm sorry. It is really good, whatever it is. It's probably a very good game. So send all hate mail to Nintendo Jump Podcast at gmail.com. Thanks.
Uh-oh. Well, and to your point, it's I think the whole thing about this, talking about these RPGs, is that the spirit of being on an adventure with different characters, that sort of adventure spirit lives on, from RPG to RPG. Back when we first started playing, to with the Super Mario RPG, the Paper Mario, Final Fantasies, and now to Octopath, that adventure spirit remains constant in our hearts. And I know it sounds really cheesy and corny, but I had to say it. And that is the most important thing, that as gamers, as fans of RPGs, that's something that we carry on, hopefully, for the rest of our lives. So it is one of the most important things in gaming. And with that being said, is there anything else that you guys would like to comment on RPGs?
No, I think that's it. We will, as we keep playing through Octopath, it'll come back up, although probably not as in depth as today.
Right.
But it'll come back up. We'll keep you updated on progress and such. As is currently where I am in the game, I currently consider it a must play on Switch. I
Yes.
definitely
Yes.
recommend it to anybody who is interested in the genre or the art style or the music or whatever you find. I think you'll have a good time with it.
I echo the same sentiment, and it has the Nintendo Jump seal of approval. Yeah.
Bam.
Nice.
Boom.
Awesome. So, yeah, thank you, everybody. This has been episode 4 of the Nintendo Jump podcast. We are on Twitter at Nintendo Jump. We are on Instagram as the Nintendo Jump. We are also on YouTube. Feel free to leave us a comment and let us know what some of your favorite RPG games or series are. We would really appreciate it if you could leave us a review on the podcast application listening of your choice. It would go a long way to gain some visibility to our podcast. And of course, feel free to send us your feedback. We want to improve our podcast and take your advice and comments into consideration. So definitely reach out and let us know what you think. Once again, this has been the Nintendo Jump Podcast. This is Sergio. And on behalf of Daryl and Kevin, thanks so much for listening. And we will catch you again next week.
All right, see you guys.
Bye. See you.